Sonic CD's Round 8 is metallic madness because R2 was cut, and this level will cut you, if not crush you in the opening foyer. These pistons are as fast as the opening bass line, and it just about sounds like only tonic chord tone calisthenics, but there's flat 5 snuck in mumbo style in place of the 5 for the tension of this level's CQC, you know, close quarters crushing. Within this game's story, Stardust Speedway was the eye of the storm, a moment of funky style before the final battle, where the Pentatonic walkdowns enjoyed a full octave of territory. But here in the madness, it's back to business with the 5 and below, the time travel constant we've heard throughout the soundtrack as far back as Collision Chaos, Quartz Quadrant, and more. Speaking of QQ, this walkdown matches the Clave rhythm of the Quartz Bayou rave in the distant past. But how could that be if the notes aren't even in alignment at all? The flexible power of rhythms like these is that you can slide the segments around to your liking. If this half is the tense rubber band and the other is relaxed, shifting the full shape forward 2 beats to swap halves reveals the pattern intact. Alterations like these don't even have to be a strictly musical chairs trading spots. Let's try sliding this to the right by just 1 beat instead of 2. So we should expect this note to wrap around at the other end like Pac-Man. Wait for it. Yes! Because the same continuous shape is there, it's just as true to say this is a clave. Now you're playing with clave power. And the way I said power on a delay is the way this resolution on the 1 comes hilariously late and abrupt, running on fumes. There's a lot going on with the chords depending on the time era. They're fleshed out extensively here in the present, in the tradition of industrial levels with a great path of chromatic motion, in this case from the 5 all the way up to the 1. For each of the narrow jams you squeeze through, I'll identify each chromatic note here on the piano as it moves. This is quite the finale zone, with callbacks to earlier in the journey. This minor 7 to tonic breakdown plays like a non-swing version of Collision Chaos's backing rhythms. And I didn't even need to transpose the Toot Toot Collision Chaos flute to the metallic madness key, because it's already in the present's relative major key of C. To the song's native key of A minor, the playground of this free-form tour de force. Sonic CD's main stage solos are most critically located in the opening zone, the final one, and the epicenter right in the middle. In Quartz Quadrant, the free-form gymnastics were context-specific, only occurring in the past within the vitality of the quadrant's natural resource reserves before Eggman's contaminations. But here in the metallic finale, the solo is not just in one era, but rather incarnated into all eras past, present, and futures. So we get to experience the gradual evolution of this expansive kitchen sink solo in depth. In the present's take on this solo, the first half is a purely pentatonic expression. See how the 2 and 6 are not used at all? It's because the pentatonic minor scale trims out the 2 and 6 so that 5 notes remain, so it gets the prefix penta. Will this be the case in each of the other time eras? To find out, you better scout out your runway before traveling, because a devious signpost can and will divert you, even after the camera locks. Where the present had an extensive set of chords, most of this earlier incarnation is pared down to a fairly basic vamp of just 2 chords. Spending any amount of time with these close quarters chords will be your trial by fire on how a diminished chord works. As a starting point, a minor chord is made of a root, minor 3rd, and perfect 5th. If you now downgrade this 5 to a tritone, is that even allowed? It sure is. It's a diminished chord, and the tension of the tritone in place of the sturdy 5 is why you hear this chord during cliffhanger endings of soap opera episodes. So amazingly, in the vast majority of this past track, it's 1 minor and 1 diminished chords exclusively. This arpeggio is relentless for the first 59 seconds, with no wiggle room for non-chord tones during each diminished chord. It's blunt chord tones exclusively. The backing piano presents these diminished triads in root position prominence, 1, minor 3, flat 5. The hills are alive with the sound of the 90s. This 2-chord vamp is relentless for most of the song, and it's really only the notes of the solo itself that claws toward a 5-chord, trying to break free of the mechanical monotony with a couple of leading tone major 7s. And if all the extendable buzzsaws weren't enough, this solo has a callback to your favorite memories at the workbench. Which brings us to the soundtrack's grand finale of warehouse rave pitch-shifted melodies. The parallel fifths at Tidal Tempest were conventional enough for strobe-like culture, a little more extreme with the workbench's parallel fourths, but in the last level's pass track, things get even more gnarly. The starting point is some standard pentatonic motion on bass. But this track duplicates the melody to shove it a minor 6th above, then duplicates it again on a tritone, technically a sharp 11 since it's in the next octave up, 18 semitones total. So that's immediately above and below the parallel fifth you might expect in a warehouse party. The dance floor tonight is packed like sardines. When plowing into the staff in this way, you're gonna get some accidentals. And it's the final collision of Little Planet's origins, with the two competing futures all converging now at an enormous crossroads. You have to be ready for both outcomes life could bring, including the moments where you forget to clear out obstacles on a time travel runway, so you get scooped by a future sign at the last second, after the camera locks. In the bad future, Robotnik has gotten his hands on this level's pentatonic walkdown, and while keeping the core scale degrees, Eggman reshuffles the notes to a disjointed game of whack-a-mole, jumping up and down in a manner that touches on the core walkdown's notes, but in reverse order, so 5-4-3-1 becomes 1-3-4-5, all while still retaining the clave. Robotnik reins in all that chord activity from the present, so the Bad Futures community has limited options. Any expansive energy the present solo got from the chromatic engines is not a thing in the Bad Future, because the entire solo is trapped in a static 1 chord. Otherwise, the diminished vamp and a 4-5 conclusion is really all you get. If you're that one guy who overstays his welcome at a warehouse rave like this, go this deep into the night and the very fabric of reality begins to warp. The optics are bad if you're nodding off in the middle of a dance move. If there's sunrise and chirping birds, just go home. The selection of key speaks remarkably to this final zone's time travel narrative. The Metallic Madness past origins began in the key of D, but in the present, Eggman's invasion is far enough along that the territory has fallen, down to A minor, the key signature with no accidentals. This is anybody's game with both potential fates on the table. Ideally, we can restore order by returning to the D where the past began. It's common courtesy that when you take someone else's stuff, put it back where you found it. So just to rub it in, Eggman's success timeline sets up shop on C sharp, just one taunting semitone under the spot where Robotnik found this place, and with the clutter of this key signature's 4 sharps. There's nothing inherently evil about the key of C sharp minor. The fact that it's on a black key instead of white is also 100% meaningless. It only derives its identity and attributes in relation to the other keys used in the specific context of the Metallic Madness suite of compositions. And so here once again we must consider ratios across values, as opposed to fallacious attributes of individual values. So what a sweet relief it is, arriving at the last act of the game, where order is restored in the key of D of this level's origins, but now in D major from the past D minor. This light at the end of the tunnel is remarkable for more than one reason. After all three eras came out pistons blazing with an aggressive clave, the good future begins with a whole note that lasts the whole measure. In fact, it actually extends uninterrupted into the middle of measure 2. And this note that rings through the land is the sweet nectar that the pentatonic minor sidestepped around, the Ionian third. The pentatonic scale that hammered us in the present and past had the prefix penta, because 5 notes remain when you remove the 2 and 6. But here in the happily ever future, the full scale is restored, and those missing notes are brought back into the good future's clave piston symphony. See? You guys, 7 reunited notes, 7 zones, 7 special stages, and that many time stones. Little Planet is back in business, baby, like Robotnik was never there. Now that scale degrees 2 and 6 are back in the roster, the good future is free to build chords on them too. And here comes the 2 chord not seen anywhere else, and which contains the 6, by the way. A Kakariko chromatic median chord brightens things further. And in a curious feat, a 4-5 progression with the same Roman numeral triads as the bad future gains new life with the setup support of a predominant function 2 chord. In hindsight, the collective identity of the 4 improv incarnations is also clear. The present theme met us first, followed by each of the others. See how the good future uses plenty of the 2 and 6 that the pentatonic minor tracks mostly trimmed out? Measure 5 of 8 is the most direct common thread that unites the 4 iterations. Its primordial origins are fairly amorphous. It takes on a more focused form when Eggman invades the present, shaping up with a minor 6 resolving to the 5, which of course he keeps on staff for his bad future. But in the good future, Sonic has reclaimed the harmony. The present and bad futures moved from the 7 to the 5, but Sonic carries the torch from there to go deeper into the tonic triad, from that 5 to the Ionian third. There's 2 parallel melodies happening in each version, and since they obey diatonic algebra, there's not a single accidental to be found. And the instrument that delivers this sweet resolution is the reason you're gonna learn what a calliope is. Steam comes out to make notes. You could have seen one in a circus wagon if you grew up in the 1890s, or as the central fixture of a dignified steamboat. A visual representation of notes on piano roll is cool enough, but seeing notes manifest in physical steam is surreal. And don't miss the 2-way glissando. For the victory lap in this last good future, the calliope has the comforting notes of a journey through this life montage. This channel's showcase of sublime music and infinitely dynamic gameplay is my gift to you. But before my music theory video series rescued this game's reputation, Sonic CD's stocks were low enough that it was famously omitted from the Sonic Mania elevator animation teaser in a bid to protect sales. But with your $20 secured, the Trojan surprise was that Sonic CD has perhaps the most pronounced influence on Mania's whole vibe. Metallic Madness jumps its cue as early as Chemical Plant. And if CD was languishing in obscurity, Mania's Metallic Madness became a phenomenal entry point, on par with the Planet Wisp rebirth in Generations 11. This music rendition keeps the diminished chord arpeggios intact, but one of many new arrangement choices is the reappearance of Ogata's signature Aqua Lake rhythm, transposed up 1 semitone in each subsequent measure. And since Sonic Mania was released so far into the 21st century, a reboot of Luigi's Mansion mechanics was fresh in the mind of pop culture. Recall that the Mania Comfort Zone had the major 7th as a tonic chord tone upon beat 1, and here in the Madness, T-Lopes just as easily sets up shop on the minor 7th as a prominent chord tone, even using the aforementioned leading tone as a chromatic upper neighbor. In the information age, it can be tricky to use orchestra hits in earnest, but set to rodents on hamster wheels, it's right where it belongs. Sonic Mania's arrangements were assembled on Obama turf, where the Metallic Madness mandatory music mod was composed by Crew Peraza Vega. The USA plot removes Amy in favor of Princess Sally, with an alternate narrative in the final level's music too. Eggman's been slacking to let Sonic get this far, and with your arrival at the final level, he must now wake up from his nap. The lead melody spells out all the stakes on the line, because in this final clash of the two competing futures in the cards, things might go good. Whereas, on the other hand, there's a perfectly plausible alternate contingency in which things might go bad. In the second chorus, the minor key path ascends upward past the 3 to the 5, to Eggman's Last Stand. Pay attention to how this melody evolves in each of the two futures, because in the good future, the thing is, it's just not even there at all. Peace is achieved throughout the land and the two competing fates have no further reason to clash. In its place we have a faster tempo on the same chords, with a distinct human touch that's only possible on mind-blowing CD quality audio. In comes the GameCube controller, pounded with all the fury of it being due for the internal deadline the next morning. All it needs now is some Soulja Boy haystacks. But in the bad future, the two competing lines are back with a vengeance, but not the one with the mirrored 1, 2, 3 for good and evil. We only get the ascension past the minor third to the 5. Here at the end of the game, the US soundtrack tries to start a new thing, where the final boss theme is just the regular boss music, but pitch shifted and with other additives you won't notice on your pivotal first playthrough. These small details you're bound to miss the first time around definitively indicates that Sonic CD is meant to be played a great many times. The first time you get to the Sonic Boom reprise during the credits is not the finale, but actually the beginning of your CD journey, which continues today, here in the present, the only place you will ever be. No matter how many hits you take, any given run could be the best of your life, starting at the precise moment you put your mind to it. And this is a good future worth fighting for. Technology is coming and evolving whether we invite it or not. But creative coexistence is always within reach, so don't get cut, and when you do, learn from it.